Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Warp. I'm Jack Rita, and this is MobiusTube, which is a forum for discussing all things Cosmic Encounter. And I'm joined today by a special guest, Icarus Panda, a.k.a. Connor. Some of you who are Cosmic Encounter fans may have already seen one or more of the Icarus Panda ranking of the Cosmic Encounter Aliens videos, and that is how I came across Connor. And the videos are well worth your time. They're very funny and insightful. Some areas with which absolutely to agree, some areas to definitely disagree on where the aliens fall in the ranking, but it's entertaining nevertheless. And there's a couple of those. Because Connor puts some effort into the videos. There's some production value and a heck of a lot more work than I put into my videos, which is normally I set my camera up, pointing at myself, and press go, and that's it. I think MobiusTube is next level for me because I've incorporated a tabletop simulator as a visual aid. Other than that, yeah, I think the videos are great, and I look forward to seeing some more. And let's get Connor 600 more subscribers so that he can quit his day job and just make videos full time. Connor, welcome to MobiusTube.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I wanted to start off with just picking your brain about how you got into board gaming in general, but Cosmic Encounter especially. What that introduction was like, and how do you have a group that likes to play it? Is it a regular crowd of people? What goes on there, and then ultimately what inspired you to do a ranking video about something that I think many of us can agree is a fairly niche game. It's an old game. It's been around for a while. It's got a lot of longevity, but it's not necessarily in a lot of players' top 10, especially anybody who is, my age, younger than me. Anybody younger than me. I think Tom Vassell is a rare exception, but he and I are actually pretty close in age. Just by, if you counted his children, like counting rings on a tree, he's definitely up there in age. So yeah, how did it start for you, and what was that like?
So I kind of have like a unique way of getting into board gaming. My dad owns a comic book store that also used to be part game shop, like local game store kind of thing. And he played a lot of competitive card games and a lot of like Warhammer and stuff. So I just grew up playing a bunch of board games. I played a lot of like random collectible games, some like Pokemon I played growing up, and like I played the World of Warcraft miniatures game for a long time. I don't know if that like rings a bell at all, but I thought that game was super sick. And then when I was around like 13, 14, I kind of started wanting to make my own games, and I was talking to my dad about it. And he was like, well, I think there's some really good games that I've played. So for Christmas, he got me all the bangers from when he was a kid. And Cosmic Encounter was the main one. He was like, you have to play this, you have to play this, this game is so good. And the first game of Cosmic I played was me, him, and my two sisters. And I remember, I'm pretty sure I played Healer, and I know that he played Philanthropist. And I just remember like a smug look on his face. Because it was a very like unassuming power. I didn't think much of it at the time. But then as the game went on, I was getting really annoyed by all the garbage in my hands. And I got whooped, but it was really cool. And I thought, I immediately was like, oh wow, that's like a really interesting like game mechanic that this person can give away cards, and it's like bad for me that I am just sitting with terrible stuff in my hand. So that's how I got into it. And then my sister is 3 years older than me, And when I was a freshman in high school, she was a senior, and she introduced it to a lot of her friends, and they ended up really liking it. So that summer, I ended up just bumming around with her, just driving to each other's friend's house, and we all just played Cosmic all night. And that was super fun. And nowadays, I'm getting a more consistent group, actually. I've put a group together. The group chat is called Poker Night, which I thought was kind of crazy because in one of your other videos, I remember someone saying that Cosmic is kind of akin to poker. And I was blown away that like someone else came to that same conclusion. And yeah, so now I'm getting a pretty consistent group together. We meet maybe like once a month. I'm trying to do it a little bit more often because I'm trying to get more used to the incursion aliens. Because a lot of the time when I teach the game, or a lot of the times when I play the game, I'm teaching the game, so I don't get to play with a lot of wacky stuff a lot. But now that I'm getting a more consistent group again, I'm starting to get a little wackier into some more weird stuff. And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, when we were starting to play a lot more regularly, we started using a lot of the really kooky variants. So, like, we went to double aliens fairly early on in our playing, just because we wanted to be exposed to more of the aliens more quickly. So we're like, all right, there's 5 of us playing. That's 5 aliens. Like, if we each control 2 aliens, and we're looking at them 10 at a time, and then we would do things like we would have a stack. Everyone would have a stack of 5 aliens as well as a stack of 3 aliens. And anytime you got a foreign colony, you would rotate the top aliens from each of your stacks. So you would you'd always be looking at new aliens, plus you'd have different combos. So sometimes, when you got late in, I've got 4 colonies or whatever, I'm seeing one of my aliens again, but it's combined with a different one. And there must have been like 20 different variants, each one more nuts than the last one. But it gave us an excuse, especially like in the 90s, we really started to play with homebrew aliens. So there was a Cosmic Encounter news group that people were posting their most of them really terrible alien ideas, but we're like, let's try it out. But there was also like an official Cosmic Encounter magazine, which, I think it only had 6 issues, but every issue they would post more and more fan aliens. And we figured, well, if the original designers of the game are publishing this Cosmic Encounter magazine, and they've published these aliens in there, they must have some sort of blessing. Like, surely they wouldn't just publish every stupid alien that came along. They'd probably put in a couple of good ones. And then we started noticing, like, there were a lot of gamer magazines back then. So there was Space Gamer, and there was White Dwarf, and Dragon magazine, and some of these would also post Cosmic Encounter aliens. There was an issue where Steve Jackson had said, here's a whole bunch of aliens that I designed, and we're like, we have got to play these aliens. And most of them were pretty terrible. That's definitely a consistent thing through the homebrew process, was like, I don't think they play tested any of these aliens. They're like, they seem like good ideas when you first read them, but then in practice, which we definitely, as we were designing aliens that were definitely going to be published, we started to learn that you have to play test these things a lot, because Cosmic creates so many bizarro edge cases, and you have, what happens if you've got this alien and that alien and this flare and this space station all happening at the same time? Is that, what's going to break? So yeah, playtesting was a thing, but we were pretty young and dumb anyway, so sometimes it took us a while to realize this is a terrible alien. I don't know why I would ever play this again. It's just awful. But yeah, we were just obsessed with it, and for a while, there ended up being 75 different aliens in the Eon edition, and it took us a while to play all of them. But we did. But the Mayfair edition had even more aliens, and the new ones that they had in were mostly good. Some of them I was just like, ugh, I don't know about this, and they have yet to be added to the Fantasy Flight edition. Some of those I was like, we're going to skip this one. But the good ones have made it in, and So yeah, I think my recommendation is if once you get everyone at the table has played the game at least once, then they're ready. They're ready for crazy variants.
Yeah.
Throw them in because they'll understand it. I think a lot of the alert level stuff, some of it has to do with how familiar are you with the game. So some aliens were like, this is not a complicated alien. But the real reason that it's yellow or red alert, it has more to do with you understanding. Well, there's like 11 or 12 artifacts, and this effect is in the game.
Right.
If you know that that's in the game, you might make decisions one way or the other, just having that knowledge or understanding what the median attack card is, and so. But in most cases, I think it's not that big of a deal. And when I'm playing with people who are either brand new or fairly new, and I'd be like, this is somebody who is new to the game, but they're not new to gaming. They've played a lot of different games,
Right.
and I'll say, yeah, you can handle this. But I will say, here's what you need to know. The most common attack card is an 8, so keep that in mind when you are making your decisions. And so I can usually guide them a little bit, filling in the gaps that they know that I know that they don't know. Although when I noticed a lot is when I'm teaching people, the people that I teach usually end up winning, and it's because they're not thinking about all of the possibilities that I know I am thinking about. I'm like, if I know that the parasite flare is in the game, I don't want to do this. And like, I have no knowledge whether it's in the game, and it's astronomical. There's like, it's 1,000 to 1 that this particular flare is in the game and in somebody's hand. So I usually outthink myself when they're like, well, the new player, he's like, well, I just played my highest attack card every time and I won, and voila. So yeah, I think even people who are relatively new, most of the time they're going to do all right. And because it's a game of so much social interaction, rarely is somebody like off on their own to their own devices, like, oh, I got to make all these decisions. And you'll have other people who are like, no, you need to invite yellow and blue because they're not a threat. And if you don't invite them, they might end up being against you, and it'll just be that much harder. And so throw them a bone, and so you get that element in there. It's good to help the new players out. And even I was like, look, you and I have agreed to play negotiates, but I am going to let you know, I'm not bound to do that. I can screw you right now if I want to.
Right.
And they're like, oh, you can do that. I was like, yeah, it's totally legal. And then I have played an attack 0, and I've beaten them because they did play negotiate. And I go, this was a hard lesson that you needed to learn. And it's like, next time, I promise I will not do that to you. But you needed to know that the threat is real. So yeah, that's the great thing about it. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're trying to get a more regular group. It's hard too because we are in just the craziest age of board gaming. Like when I first learned Cosmic Encounter, there were not very many games for it to compete against, and so we were like, this is great that it's a game that has such great replayability because we didn't have a lot of other options. We had a couple other games. We played Dune occasionally, and we played Diplomacy. We would play Dungeons and Dragons. That was the thing that actually brought us together. But there weren't a lot of other games out there. And occasionally somebody would show up with something like some little game that had chits and stuff. And we're like, all right, we're going to play this. And we'd play it once, but then we'd go back to Cosmic Encounter. But now, I mean, there's literally 100 new board games that come out every month. And so you're just like, oh, it's crazy. Like, well, I want to try this game. And, my game room has got hundreds of games on the shelf. And I like to throw some love to some of these other games. Like I have Root. I told you about that. I've owned it for more than a year, and I have never played it. So I do want to play it. And, before the pandemic, we had a fortnightly what we call gentlemen's game night. And although, anybody could come, but it was the most of the neighborhood dads and people close by. And we're like, all right, come on over on Tuesday night, and we're going to play a board game. And I'd have something different out to show them. And, it was very, very carefully curated. Like, this is a game that's easy to understand. They'll like it. They'll do well, and it'll make them want to come back and play a slightly more complex game next time. And,
that's how you get them.
Yeah. I had to, for some of these people, I had to work them up to Cosmic Encounter. I was like, all right, now we're going to play Cosmic. And you're going to see what my favorite game is, and hopefully you get a sense of why that is. But yeah, it took some time, and then of course we couldn't get together very much in person, and that was right around the time that I started to work more on designs and play testing. So I was able to fill my time with gaming, but it was very, very specific. So yeah, I think yeah, it's good to hear, Connor, that you are now familiar with TTS. We're in TTS now as we record this. I'd like to have a visual aid, even if we're not really looking at anything specific, but we might bring some other stuff out. But we are going to have another Cosmic Encounter Invitational game, Connor. So I want to try to coordinate with you to get you into that game. Might try to get Bill Eberly to play as well. Maybe Greg Halaka will want to join in. And we have a number of other, like our former play testers on Cosmic Odyssey, and the people that were playtesting what was going to be the new expansion, but is currently not going to be published. But they are still hungry for more Cosmic. So people have been like, "When's the next one?" So it's going to be soon, and yeah, we'll throw in some kind of variant. How much of Cosmic Odyssey have you been exposed to yet, Connor?
I've played. We've messed around with most of the aliens. Like when Cosmic Odyssey first came out, me and my main group, which is like it's like including me, it's like 4 to 5 other people, or including me, it's like 4 to 5 people. Yeah. So we played. We've played most of the aliens. We really liked the campaign. We thought the campaign was really cool. The aspect of like collecting aliens and putting them in like certain times we thought was really cool. We liked the new ways of like drafting the aliens. We thought that was super neat because one of my friends really likes drafting like magic cards.
Yeah.
So there was like a component to that we thought was really cool. We haven't messed around with the moons too much, but I've been looking into them because I hear you talking about them a lot. And one thing that I think is really cool about Cosmic, and especially like Odyssey and some of the more, some of the more wacky things you can throw into the game is like the more stuff that's in the game, the more you can negotiate over.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize because a lot of the times when I'm introducing people, like I said, I don't put a lot of stuff in. So most of the time you're negotiating cards or colonies, but with tech and moons and stuff, that like opens up a whole new dimension to the game. So I want to get that on the table. But one thing that really impressed me about Odyssey was the aliens. I thought the aliens in that set were really solid. Especially the alternate timeline aliens I thought were really good.
Well, that was a funny journey because, yeah, I had a lot of people who were like, "Oh, I wish they would fix this alien and fix that alien," and that was their mindset of fixing it. And I think the idea of proposing to Fantasy Flight, "Hey, we'd like to fix some of these aliens," and they were very resistant to that. But when I began to couch it in terms of, well, what if it was an alternate, it was a parallel universe, and this is just a different version of that alien, and they were like, oh, we really like that. We really like that idea. So I had to, for me, I had to be like, I don't want to go too hog wild and be like, here's 34 alternate aliens. And because there probably weren't that many, but there were a few that, like a lot of people are like, oh, I wish this were changed to this or that. So I wanted to keep it relatively tame because I still wanted to include new aliens as well. I think that's usually the big draw for anybody picking up the expansion is they're like, ooh, I wonder what the new aliens are. So I'm glad to hear that you've been enjoying some of those guys because they were fun to make. It was a mix of, some of them have familiar names for people who are longtime fans of Cosmic, because the original designers were like, we sure would love for all 75 of the original aliens to make it into Fantasy Flight. And they said, look, we don't care if you change the alien completely, just keep the name. And I was like, oh, all right, that should be pretty easy. So we managed to get them all in there. and even like a couple of the Mayfair aliens, which the original designers were not happy with how Mayfair ran their business when it came to Cosmic Encounter. So they're like, we're in no hurry to include any of their dumb aliens in our game. And I was like, yeah, but the fans want some of these aliens, so I'm going to include them anyway. And so we did. But yeah, that alien mix is fun. I think for me, my favorite part about the campaign is that and I do like the drafting, the different ways of getting the aliens, but they also that they're like, all right, now you must use this variant, and you're like, okay, I guess we drew the card, now we got to use it, and so I find it's just a great way to get people's toes wet with some of these variants, and they go, okay, a lot of times you're like, all right, there's 12 variants, what are we going to play? And we're like, we'll just use the reward deck, and then that's it. And they're like, okay. But now, because it's part of the whole gameplay, where you're like, no, now we have to use the Lux, or now we have to use moons, and it just feels a little more organic, and it's just a lot more accepted and accessible for the players. And I've played a few campaigns, especially with some people who are not super familiar with Cosmic, and they didn't really have much of an issue with that either. Even they're like, all right, we're throwing you into the deep end. We've got a new variant, and but nothing is that complex that you're like, oh, I can't figure it out. The evolutions is too hard to understand. It's like, no, it's pretty easy to understand. So they do pretty well. So yeah, I look forward to that. I've enjoyed it so much that I've been making my own custom components. I've got a lot in TTS, but I've made physical versions of the wells as well. So I've got a lot of new age cards that have all sorts of new alien selection methods and other variants that get introduced as well. And I'm sure that I've talked about them in at least one other video here on the channel. But I'm addicted to it now. So, because I've got a really good template, I was like, oh, these cards look good. They look legit. Like my friends can't tell which are the new ones and which are the old ones. So it's a hoot. And I look forward to it. So yeah, Connor, was there anything that you wanted to talk about in this episode of MobiusTube? Because I'll just keep picking your brain about. Like the next thing I want to talk about is just what compelled you to make those videos and your process for going into it. But we can get to that. What was something you wanted to talk about?
Something I just wanted to touch on really quickly about what we were just talking about. Kind of unrelated, but Magnet was like an old alien, right?
Yes.
Like it was from one of the older editions.
Magnet was an alien I played the very first time I played Cosmic Encounter. We did a couple of games, so I don't remember if Magnet was the first alien I played, but I played it that day. And so I've always wanted it to get into the set. But the reason that it hadn't ever been published before Odyssey was because Fantasy Flight had sort of created this unspoken rule about having aliens that take away too much agency from the players. And so they felt like with Magnet, if I'm Magnet, I can be like, all right, Orange, you have to join my side. And you had no say in the matter. And or I could be like, Red, you're out. You can't do anything. So they didn't love that idea. So I tweaked it a little bit so that it has, if you ally, that you might get affected by Magnet. And and if you choose not to ally, then you can be like, all right, now I don't have to worry about it. So at least you have some agency over it. The other thing is that, like, for a long time, there was an alien in the old editions called Crystal. And the way that Crystal worked was if you allied, I could force you. I'd tell you how many of your ships you had to bring. So it'd be like, all right, But the way it turned out, it was either going to be 1 or 4. So if you were joining my side, I would be like, you must bring 4. And if you were joining the other side, it's like you could only bring 1. And so it wasn't that interesting. And for years, there were people who were like, they should combine Magnet and Crystal into one alien. And it would have been a little bit absurd there. It still would have been 1 or 4. It'd be like, you must join and you must bring 4. And so I didn't think that was the right solution. But the Magnet that ended up in Odyssey has a little bit of the original Magnet to it and a little bit of the Crystal effect as well. And it's kind of like a either or. When you're doing it, so you can be like, all right, if you're gonna join, or if you decided you've joined, I can now affect how many ships are. But it's also kind of based on how Magnet is involved too. But was there more about that you wanted to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think after Dominion, we were like, all right, this is getting kind of crazy. Because a lot of the Dominion powers, like, just like the amount of text on the card, you're immediately like, oh wow, okay. So when I opened up Odyssey, we were really impressed that like I felt like a lot of the aliens in that expansion um were like pretty elegant. And we were surprised that some of those aliens came out like this late, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple.
But we
So
were
there's a couple of reasons for that. One was, with Dominion, it was this fan designed set. So
right.
all these fans submitted aliens, and me and a couple other guys got to go and sift through them all and pick the ones that we thought would be the best. And so some of it was, all right, this is a really interesting effect, or it's a unique effect, but yeah, it's going to be a lot of text to make sure that it's clear what it does.
Right.
And the other part of that is, once you're on your fifth or later expansion, you have a lot of other moving parts that you're now accounting for, where you're like, okay, what if Masochist is in the game? We got to make sure we write around that. And what if Healer is in the game? And what if this alien is? And, we used to joke that if all of the base game aliens had not ever been published and they were coming in later, their text would be quite a bit different, because you would be trying to account for this, that, or something else. So we knew that was going to be the case with Dominion, but we were like, you know what, these are the aliens the fans want, so they're just going to have to deal with it. Although we did try to strike a balance between green, yellow, and red aliens. It would have been really easy for them just to be all red, just because some of them were crazy. And then, of course, it got a little bit even more insane with Cosmic Eons, which was from the original designers, but it was all these really advanced ideas. They were really trying to come up with aliens that did stuff that no other alien had ever done. And so that required explanation. And then we were still dealing with the problem of, okay, we're in a world where there's already 200 aliens, so we're cross-referencing and whatnot. And so there were some people who were like, yeah, the aliens in Eons, there's some really interesting effects, but it's such, it's a wall of text and it's really tiny. So when I was putting together the aliens for Odyssey, I was really focused on trying to stick to aliens that didn't need that treatment, that could be a lot more pithy and elegant. And, Meek is one we're not going to talk about because I made a mistake on that. But, with the case of, if it wasn't an alien, like Delegator was a classic alien that we knew we wanted to include. And so that, that one might have a little bit more text. But yeah, like Lemming, pretty straightforward. Same thing with some of the, especially the newer ones. Extractor was a brand new alien. Vector was a brand new alien. Gremlin was brand new. And it managed to keep it relatively simple. So yeah, that was an objective. I was like, I got to do that, because there were definitely other aliens that I'd been testing out and looking at and liked, but I was like, all right, I'm limiting myself to 30, basically 30 new aliens. And then there was a 12 alt timeline for a total of 42. But I was like, I got to try to keep this in there. And Geek is a red alert one. It's a little bit longer, but I was like, I like this idea so much that I was like, I'm definitely keeping this in there. This is an alien. And this is, Peter Alaka we were talking about Board Game Geek one day. He's like, we should have an alien called Geek. So I was like, well, I'm going to make one. So I did. And this seemed to make the most sense to me. I really like meta aliens anyway. And so I have a couple of friends who are like, oh, I Geek is my best alien because I can name anything. And originally it was, you could ask one of two questions. So there's talking about, the upside down text. The other one was that you could just say, what alien has the power to dominate? And that was the question that you were asking. And some of the playtesters were like, That might be too hard. We can. This is, if you're trying to describe what it does, that's easier to guess than what alien has the power to pull, and you're like pull. I can't think of anything that's what's pulling, and I don't think there is one that pulls. But like extract would be easy to guess. But power to migrate that might be hard. People are like, I can't think of which alien is that. But if you're just like, what alien gains colonies from ships in the warp, then you're like, all right, I think I could figure that out. So yeah, I appreciate that you appreciated the selections that ended up in there, and I wanted to make sure that they were not too bananas and easy enough for people to understand. Because some people, this might be their first expansion that they get,
Right.
Especially if they're like, oh, look, it comes with all of the variants, so it's a nice little sampler platter of I can try all these things out and decide, do I like hazards? Do I like the reward deck? And then if I do, then I can pick up that other expansion. But now I've got these 30 extra aliens, and then they're all pretty accessible in terms of how do they work and what do I do with them. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we like the minion, for sure. I think, but yeah, like I think the Odyssey ones are definitely a bit more like elegant. But either way, like I feel like the recent expansions that, at least the ones you've worked on, I feel like have a lot of like quality of life checks. Like I can kind of tell the difference between some of the older ones and some of the newer ones, because I just feel like the newer expansion cards like have a lot of fail case like safety nets. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think that's really well done. Like when my friends and I are reading the cards, we're like, "Oh my gosh, they accounted for that!" Like we're like so hyped. So that's really cool. And on Geek, another funny thing about my friends and I is whenever we're like driving around, we like to we play games where we're like, oh, we're thinking of like a cosmic encounter alien, and we'll try to play like 20 questions to try to narrow it down. And when I read Geek, I was like, oh my god, like, this is literally like us just as a power. So yeah, I think the work you've done on the last expansion too has been absolutely fantastic.
Well, thank you. If that ends up being the last one, I feel like we went out on a bang, and I was just blown away by how agreeable Fantasy Flight was with everything that was going to go into it, and it does feel like it's 3 expansions rolled into one. So it's great. I certainly recommend anybody who likes Cosmic definitely pick it up. I think it does make a good first expansion. Just again, there's some good mix of aliens. You've got all the variants there that you can try out, and then when you're ready for a campaign, you can really dive in and experience the full Cosmic Encounter effect. Yeah. All right. So back to you, Connor, and your motivation. Why you wanted to do the rankings, and why you felt like you had to put in the extra work on the production value with all of the animations and bells and whistles. As somebody who is the laziest YouTuber, I'm always impressed. But I understand. You're like, all right, here's part 1. Part 2 will be out in 3 months, or whatever. I was like, I can't wait that long. I'm trying to put out 5 videos a week at a minimum. And so for that, the quality does have to go down because I just don't have the time to put a lot more effort into it. But yeah, let's hear from you and what motivated you to do it, and the style that you ended up using.
Well, I started making like Ticket to Ride analysis videos in college because it was a game that I played a lot with my family. Like my family and I play a lot of Ticket to Ride. And Ticket to Ride's a really simple game, and I wanted to like analyze it to its limit. Like, how far can you go, I guess?
Yeah.
But after a while, I kind of started like, there was one video I was making where I was like, I don't know, like I really don't know how I feel about this game, and it was kind of like stressing me out a little bit. So, I was like, well, I really like Cosmic, and Cosmic's a bit more like, it's just like a fun game. So, and stylistically, I knew that like hardcore like analysis and stuff was something I wanted to do, but I wanted it to be like lighthearted. I'm not like in real life, I'm not someone who is very like serious. So Cosmic is a wacky game, and I wanted to practice being like wackier in videos and being more energetic and funny. And I thought that was just like the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, it's a good mix. I mean, you know, Cosmic Encounter, I used to describe it as it's the party game for geeks. So people who are like, I know board games, and you're like, well, this is like a party game because it is pretty absurd at times. And and it's also a game that strangely, over the years, a lot of people have wanted to do deep dive analysis about many aspects of the game, just the core mechanisms of the game, but the aliens as well. There's been a lot of that out there. So you're definitely onto something, and you're not alone in that. It is a good marriage of it's a game that you can put some thought into and really pick apart all of what makes it tick. But it's also pretty whimsical, and depending on your group, it can be very just goofy, and especially if you're. The other thing, as I describe it, is it's a game for people who like having fun playing games.
Yes.
And
Yes.
because you know there's just enough of a strategic element to it where you're like, all right, there's some strategy here, there's tactics that you can use, especially as you delve into the social aspect. Very underrated part of the game, but very critical, I think, to leveraging it for success. But it is so whimsical, and it's the grandfather of the whole take that thing. We're like, oh, I'm going to do this, and it's like, well, I've got this card that in this rare circumstance can stop you, and you're like, oh my God, you have the card. So and it's got that, and it's just grown exponentially in all of the ways that it exploits that element of gameplay. And so for some people who take gaming a little too seriously, they're like, well, I don't like Cosmic Encounter because it is too much of this. Well, you zapped me and I was trying to do something. And they're like, yeah, well, maybe you're just a little too uptight. I think that's the reason that you're not enjoying it. And you just, maybe if you played it with some people who are a little more loose and relaxed and have fun with the absurdities that go on in the game, you'd enjoy it a lot better. So yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah. On that note, like a lot of my group that I play with, a lot of them just happen to be like ex-theater kids, basically.
Yeah.
So we get very much into like the role-playing aspect of it. Every time Butler comes up, it's like a whole thing. We take the Butler power very seriously. So yeah, like that aspect of it, I think is what makes it so fun. It's the game. It's the game I've always said that no matter what is happening, I'm having fun. If I'm like getting destroyed, I'm still having a good time. If I'm winning, I'm still having a good time. Like just that aspect of it, I think is really underrated. Because a lot of the times when you look up like Cosmic, you just see people being like, well, Virus is clearly overpowered. And it's like, well, yeah, but like, you know, there's four other people in the game, you know? So there's like ways of balancing it out, but I think like the idea that some powers are just infamously like insane is also just like part of the game. There's kind of like a meta aspect to it where it's like, yeah, everyone knows that this power is strong, and the galaxy is going to counteract it in whatever way it's going to do it. So I really enjoy that aspect, and like watching players who take the game or just take games like super seriously. Just watching them crumble as you play some insanely just like cheesy thing from your hand brings me a lot of joy. I hate to say, my sister's boyfriend is a pretty hardcore gamer, I would say, and we introduced him to Cosmic, and he was like, "What? That's so unfair." And I was like, welcome to Cosmic Encounter. Like, the whole game isn't fair, And I think once you learn that the game isn't mathy and is more like social, not only does it become better, but your chances of winning like exponentially increase.
Yeah.
So I think that's like such a cool aspect to the game that I think makes it like pretty timeless.
Yeah, what it makes it stand out for me is that I think more than any other game, at the end of it, I feel like I've got some funny stories to tell, and just some of the unusual situations that might be hard, if not impossible, to reproduce if we sat down to play it again. And I think that's great. You mentioned Ticket to Ride, which we have and we play as well, and I love, but I've never at the afterwards like, and then I made my way all the way to Los Angeles from Chicago. Right. It was amazing. It's like, no, that happened just about every game. So it's like, all right, while it's a good time, it's not going to be the sort of thing that has these memorable stories that there might be nobody else who has played this game has that exact story. And they're like, wow, we had one where this happened. And it's like, oh, that's crazy. And, or how did that happen? It's like, well, we did this. I love to tell the story. We were playing in the pre-Fantasy Flight days when there were no colony markers. So you just had to constantly look around and be like, all right, blue has 1, 2, 3. You've got 4 colonies, and red has 3. Okay, I can invite red. And we were doing that, and we were playing. I think it was an 8-player game. We're sitting around, we're playing, and my friend Marcus, and he hates when I tell this story, but I love telling it. He's like, well, now hold on. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, hey, I have 5 foreign colonies. I win. And we're all like, what? You never win. What happened? We're all looking at it, we're counting, and I counted, and I had 6 foreign colonies, and I was like, oh, I win more. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And so I don't know how that happened, where we just weren't paying enough attention to know that both of us had won the game at some point earlier in the evening, but it's one of those games where I'm sure we were using moons and we were using double aliens, and it was probably just bananas start to finish. But I was like, I can't think of another game like that where that situation was going to happen. And even all of my friends who play a ton of Cosmic Encounters, like, well, I've never played it to the point where I had 6 foreign colonies and didn't know it, and somebody else thought that they had won. So it's like, yeah, that's the kind of thing you get from Cosmic, and so it's yeah, and if I describe that to somebody who knows Cosmic, they're not going to be like, well, I can't believe that happened. They're like, oh, right. I can totally see that happening. Yeah. So it's just, the game really lends itself to those kinds of unique situations, just because you get some strange combination of aliens. And that's usually all it takes, is just like, all right, they had these 6 aliens in play, and it created this just totally bananas situation. But I like to have a couple. I don't want to play the game with 5 variants all at the same time necessarily, but I like to have the reward deck in there, because for me it's just second nature at this point. And as you can see here from my TTS, I've got the 3 different reward cards, which I have in my physical version, but is not normal. So I've got the Defender rewards and the Ultra rewards and the regular rewards. So even though there's already 2 variants wrapped into another variant, we just treat this is a normal part of the game. So then we're like, yeah, we'll play with moons as well. And we feel like, moons, that's challenge me. So we're like, all right, maybe we'll throw in one more thing. We'll throw in hazards. And even hazards, you're like, well, you're really only dealing with them once every 3rd encounter or so. So even that doesn't feel like it's too much. So we're like, yeah, we'll do that, and maybe we'll throw in space station. So yeah, we're using four/5/6 variants all at once. And that's if we're not playing with double aliens, which is really its own variant. So I like to have a lot of the stuff in there, but not go too crazy. So, but yeah, it's just because then we think now we're really setting ourselves up for a pretty memorable experience.
Right.
No matter what happens, no matter which aliens we have in there, everyone we're like, oh, we're just going to use some vanilla aliens because we're using all this other crazy stuff. Yeah, that's what's great about it. It's so modular that it's easy to say, all right, no, we'll just use green aliens and we'll just use the regular rewards and nothing else. There's already enough going on just with that, so it's good times.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to like stories just about the game. When I made my list and I made my videos, like a lot of the comments I got kind of like swayed me on a few of the aliens, and I think that's like another interesting aspect to it too. Is like my table experience is not your table experience. Like I put Dictator really low, and I remember someone was like, "That is my favorite alien in the game," and like I was like, "Yeah, I mean, that's valid." I had a really bad Dictator experience,
Yeah.
and I think that just like soured me on it. But the more I talk to people and the more I hear about the game, I'm like, yeah, there's actually even less like duds than I thought there were. And like the game just kind of feels like it gets better the more I talk to people about it and hear their experiences. It truly is a game of infinite possibilities. The box is not, it's not lying to you.
Yeah, we sometimes play where we are assigning aliens to other people. We're like, all right, I get to pick which alien you're going to play, and be like, oh no,
That's
Connor
cool.
is definitely going to be the Dictator because we know how much he loves it. And so people will be picking stuff for me. They're like, oh, we'll give him the worm because we know he hates the worm. And I was like, oh, all right, I'm going to make the worm work. You just watch. So it is kind of a fun way to try because everyone's like, oh, I've got my favorites that I like to go to, and it's like, well, let's see how you do with Sloth, and then let me know how that experience went. And so yeah, we in the '90s we had come up with this variant called Bad Powers, and they were all aliens that were bad on purpose. They all gave you handicaps. And so we were like, all right, we're playing double alien. So you've got a good one and you've got a bad one. And that was just a really bizarre experience. And I enjoyed it, but it's like, this will be a hard sell. I don't know if I could ever get Fantasy Flight to agree to publish 20 really bad aliens. And like, these are all terrible. And you're like, why would I have these? It's like, well, it's to see how you can do with that handicap. And that was the challenge for us. It was a challenge, but it was a fun challenge because they're like, okay, I've got these handicap. The closest we got was one of the things that the moons do. So I'm going to dig this out here. And it's these moon bases. So I've got 8 of these moons here. And they, well, you won't be able to tell anything from this because it's just a number. But the way that these work is if you've got a ship on this moon, it counts as another foreign colony. So, and this is probably a bad example. So we'll say, let's say that yellow has won the encounter, and when you win, if there's an empty moon, you can divert one of your ships there, and so this counts as a foreign colony for yellow, and this counts as another one. So this would be 2 foreign colonies.
Oh, wow.
Run 1 encounter, but all of these orange moon bases also give you a handicap. So there'll be things like you can't have more than 4 cards in your hand, or you can't play artifacts, or you can't, each one's different and each one is undesirable. But you're like, all right, at any point you can say, all right, I'm taking that guy off of there, but then you're losing the colonies. So you have to decide, is it worth it? Is it worth it to me to have that penalty? Just because if I get another one, if I landed on another one, and you can tell that's what this is. You're looking, you're like, all right, even though I don't know what the effect is, I know this is a moon base. So if like, all right, on my first encounter, I got 2 colonies there. Now I'm attacking red. And I was like, all right, I'm going to attack them on this planet. And if you beat red here, you get to do the same thing. And that would be, boom, 2 more. And you're like, great, now I'm at 4 colonies on my first turn. So yeah, but now I've got like 2 handicaps. You're like, ugh, this is, I can't invite allies, or whatever they are. That's what you're dealing with. So that's the closest I could get to having the bad aliens in the game, is these negative effects. But it's only the 1 moon, so that's what's fun about these, is that the moons, even the moons themselves, are modular. So you can say like, well, we don't want to use these moons, and so there's 80 other moons to choose from. You're like, all right, we'll use the other ones that it's we don't have to deal with these. And then there's even the 1 type of moon. If I can find those guys. Yeah, no, it's the black ones. No, what color? Oh, it's these right here. These are what in the rule book, they're called new moons, and it's because you don't know what type they are, and they could be, one of them could be a moon base. I think one of them is. I don't know which one. Oh, there you go. So yeah, so number 4 is a moon base, but you're like, all right, I'm going to attack this moon, and red knows what it is, and red's like, don't let him get this moon, because he's at 3 colonies right now, and he's attacking this moon. You're like, don't let him land here, because then, then he's going to win the game, and then he's like, he's lying. He just doesn't want me to get this effect. He's like, I'm not lying, I tell you. So it's yeah, I like that. So you can be like, all right, we like the idea of not knowing what the different moon types will be. This is a cheesy moon, so the cheesy ones are the really silly moons, like you have to speak in rhymes, or if you're not talking or breathing in, you must be humming at all times. And that's everybody at the table must be humming. I remember one time we were playing this at a tournament, and this moon was in play, and it was occupied, and so somebody walked by our table, and there were 6 of us playing, and we're all humming, and they're like, what the hell game are you guys playing? And we're like, oh, we're playing Cosmic Encounter, so if we're not talking or breathing in, we have to be humming, otherwise we lose a ship to the warp. So and then while we were talking, we had to speak in rhymes. So that was the other thing. We had both of those moons in effect at the same time. And, what game has that? I don't know. I can't think of another game that has something ridiculous like that. But you can, while there's a whole set, there's 8 of these cheesy moons. You can say we're not using those. But then you got to remember there's one in the new moons as well. So watch out for that. So yes, you have that to look forward to, Connor. Let me know how moons turns out once you do give them a shot. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, maybe we'll throw moons into the next invitational and force you. It'll be moons, and every player is the dictator, and because you can do stuff like that. Because I can just be like, we got a dictator there, dictator there, dictator there.
Oh, this is scary.
Yeah. So yeah. So although I say you'd have to go in, turn order. Who gets to do the dictator first? We're like, well, you're going to be attacking purple, but I am purple. Well, good luck. Good luck with that. So yeah. All right, Connor, was there anything else? We're getting close to an hour. Not that we have to, quit anything, but I want to give you a chance if there was anything else you wanted to get off your chest or criticize.
I did want to ask you, at the beginning, you said there's some things on my list that you disagreed with. I was wondering which ones.
Off the top of my head, I can't think. But what I will do is I will go back through your videos and I will leave a comment letting you know. Here's an example, Connor. I think this one is too far down on your list or too far up. It's usually it's too far down. Like, I think this alien is better than you're giving it credit for, and I'll certainly give you some taste of my reasoning for it. But by and large, I didn't have an issue, and it was funny because I think by the second video, I was like, all right, I think I got a pretty good sense of Connor's style of play and what his preferences are for it. And some of it was just like you seemed to like things that shake things up quite a bit, and
Yeah.
and I like those as well. So I didn't disagree with a lot, but I think maybe a couple of those aliens can shake things up a little bit more than you may have initially realized. And some of it is like like when I play Cosmic Encounter, I'm very into the social aspect, and I'm leveraging like I'm threatening constantly. I'm like, I'll tell you what, if you do this or don't do that, I will not make your life hell in the near future. I can promise. I'll give you a couple of encounters before I do X, Y, or Z. It's like, yeah, don't make a deal this turn because I will play the breach, and maybe I have it, and maybe I don't, and nobody expects that I do. So I definitely will play it, but I let people know. I was like, don't use that now, otherwise I'm going to zap it. Or like, please zap right now because I've got 2 card zaps and I'm looking forward to, saving one for later. So yeah, stuff like that. And I think some alien powers have some not obvious threat capacity. Where you can say, look, I've got this capability here with my alien power, and
Right.
we can't make a binding deal at the moment because we're not in a negotiated situation, but we can have an informal deal. And so people are like, oh, all right, here's my deal. I'll go for it. And just because my alien power, like Trader, and be like, I was like, maybe you want to get rid of your hand, and I was like, I've got some better cards, so let's do this, and we'll, you throw the fight, but I'll give you a better hand, and so most people aren't thinking about Trader in those terms. They're not like, oh, I don't want to get rid of a good card, because I was like, whatever crap you give me, I'm gonna be able to get rid of very soon, so I'm not too worried about you handing it to me now. Let me do you this favor, and in return, invite me along, and so yeah, there's a lot out there that people, I think, are not taking full advantage of when they're playing. But after they've played a couple of games with me, they're like, okay, there's more to this game than I thought, and there's stuff I should have been doing that I haven't been doing. So that is that's what I think you'll find. So yes, if you revisit your own list and start imagining how would Jack Rita play with these aliens, you'd be like, oh yeah, like every alien is a cudgel, in my opinion. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I look forward to seeing you across the table, even if it's virtually. But yes, I will go through those videos again because they're pretty easy to rewatch, and so I don't mind giving them another look, and I'll leave some comments and see how it goes. All right. Well, Connor, I want to thank you so much for being a guest here on MobiusTube, and we'll definitely have you on again,
Awesome.
especially if you start to put out some more videos for us to sink our own teeth into. And I look forward to trying to coordinate with you on having you join us for a live in-game session, and we'll play with whatever variant you want, and we'll see how it goes. So yes, the links to Connor's channel on there. Like and subscribe. I said I would never say that during videos, but I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about somebody else's, a worthy somebody, and not just so centric on Cosmic. So there's a lot of other games, and Connor is a budding game designer himself. So I look forward to seeing how that turns out for you as well. Thanks everybody for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments and any questions you have for Connor. You can ask me. I'll pass those along. He'll probably read them. He'll be checking the comments on this pretty much every day, I think. So we'll see how it goes. But that's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.